collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Bearing in mind the very unequal coverage of the mainstream media when it comes to the presidential candidates, this week on the programme we give the floor to two of the independents. And as well as outlining their policies, they explain what made them decide to stand.
The whole way things are done here in Cyprus is really a bit like a banana republic. And I mean that respectfully. I don't mean the people in Cyprus. I don't mean their companies. I mean the way the government does things. You go to certain state departments and they make you queue up. You're in the wrong queue. You go to another. You don't get a reply. I call that a banana republic. And again, I say that respectfully. So that's the main thing. It was anger and rage. And I believe I have a solution, or many solutions, to a lot of the problems that we have in Cyprus.
First of all, the future of my country, the future of new generations, of course the political problem, and the fact that we have a vision, we have plans for this country, and this is why I decided to run for this election.
There's less than a month to go to the presidential elections here in Cyprus, and voters in 2023 are spoiled for choice, with no fewer than 14 candidates standing. Many voters, however, have probably only heard anything about 4 or 5 of them, because although the law states that candidates should be given equal treatment, coverage in the mainstream media has focused almost exclusively on the 3 who have the backing of the established political parties. Not surprisingly, it is they who are leading the polls, and all of them have been closely connected to the current administration. Trying to be even-handed here on the Cyprus News Digest, on this week's programme we give the floor to 2 of the perhaps lesser-known independent candidates. Starting with Andronicos who describes himself on his website as an entrepreneur and philanthropist. Andronicos, thanks for joining me. Can you start by telling me what it is that made you decide you should stand for the presidency of Cyprus?
Well, Rosie, firstly, I do thank you for allowing me and inviting me to your show, to your podcast. That is a good question. I have been asked it several times. I would say it was rage, anger, frustration, because certain aspects of the whole way things are done here in Cyprus is really a bit like a banana republic. And I mean that respectfully. I don't mean the people in Cyprus. I don't mean their companies. I mean the way the government does things. You go to certain state departments and they make you queue up. You're in the wrong queue. You go to another. You don't get a reply. I call that a banana republic. And again, I say that respectfully. So that's the main thing. It was anger and rage. And I believe I have a solution, or many solutions, to a lot of the problems that we have in Cyprus.
OK, well, we've not got all day, so can you put them in a nutshell for me? What do you think are the most important things that you need to address?
OK, well, right at the top of the queue, although I've put it last in my manifesto, is the very top thing that has plagued our country for over 50 years, is the Cyprus problem. Now, what I've done, because we haven't got all day, I'd love to speak to you for hours here, but obviously we cannot practically, is I have created a manifesto that the Greek version runs to 77 pages. It has 32 sections, each one dealing with a very important heading. And one thing I wish to add, by the way, in anything I've done with the manifestos I will explain, and I've used the plural, plus my music, which is unusual, is I've done it in Greek and English. And there's a reason for that. I am fed up, sick and tired, that they do not respect British Cypriots or expat Cypriots, whether from South Africa or not, who they being the government and government entities, they do not respect the fact that they're Greek, is not good, or maybe they don't even speak the language. Yet they are us. They are Cypriot. So what I've done is Greek and English, 32 sections, manifesto. I've also done a satirical manifesto. Everything's on my website, Andronicos.cy. Can be accessed via my Facebook page, my campaign Facebook page. And what it does, my satirical manifesto, is using satire, humour, and in a way I'm mocking myself, actually, as a trainee politician, a trainee president, in looking at ourselves, looking at the system, and getting ideas of what the problems are, using humour. I do invite people to have a laugh.
But how do you think that's going to get them to vote for you?
Well, they can't. Well, a lot of the, I call it the expat community, or British, cannot vote for them, right? It is to be constructive, to put ideas in so that they can, so that I can try and get the system changed, and they can lobby to get the system changed, because it doesn't matter what language we speak, whether we can vote or not, we have the right to say what we want done. We want to escalate. We want to create change so that we're heard. So, as for the Greek-speaking community, the Cypriots, who can vote for me, the satirical manifesto was for those who are totally apathetic to the whole political system. The 26% or so of the population who don't even bother to vote. They've given up. So what I've done is for them to kind of think to themselves, well, yeah, let's read this stuff. We normally wouldn't read political stuff. We'd rather go to a dentist and have all our teeth extracted without anesthetic, rather than get stuck in politics, even though we are Greek Cypriot, we've lived here all our lives. It gives them a chance to have a think of, this Andronicos guy, he's a little bit unusual. He's the only one who's ever written music, a satirical manifesto, a serious one, a serious presidential manifesto, and has taken responsibility by actually putting things in writing. Because some candidates haven't got a manifesto. They just say, oh, vote for us, we're great, and we've got the solutions to all our problems.
Okay, I have to interrupt you there. One of the things that I think you do have in your manifesto is, for example, increases to the state pension. How are you going to fund that?
Well, okay, firstly, it sounds a little more dramatic and expensive than it is. My changes to state pension aren't necessarily just jumping up and down like a lot of politicians do and say, oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I've said how we're going to do it. For example, in the UK, you're probably aware, you can go back between 7 and 10 years and top up your pension by paying a lump sum, which arguably can be done with stage payments in Cyprus. It's procedural. So by changing and tweaking the system, especially during the coronavirus, where a lot of people didn't pay enough national insurance here in Cyprus, social insurance, it's a way they can top up their pension, quite a nice amount, but we're not talking huge amounts. If you look at the whole economy of Cyprus, which is around 10 billion a year as far as income and expenditure, with a little bit of a shortfall at the moment based on the global economy. If I discussed all the maths of where we're going to rob Peter to pay Paul and balance the books, we will be here all day, Rosie.
Okay, but people want to know. They've spent so many years listening to politicians saying that we'll do this and we'll do that, and the bottom line is, if the funds aren't there to do it, then it can't be done. I mean, that brings me as well to you saying that you would implement productivity rewards in the public sector. Now, surely public sector employees get paid a substantial amount of money. Why do they need further rewards? Surely, if we had a system whereby it was merit that was responsible for whether or not you got promoted, that should be enough.
Rosie, I see your point of view, and we are actually talking the same thing, except I'm talking at a slightly different angle. Let me give you an example. Okay, I've worked with businesses. I have several companies. I know what it is like to pay people bonuses. Some are highly paid, were highly paid. But here is a big difference. productivity and merit go hand in hand. I don't care if somebody earns $100,000 a year, right? Hey, I'll give them more money if it means we are more productive or we sell more. The same should be done with the public sector. And one of the measurements could be customer service. When you order something online, you often get a questionnaire. If you visit a call center, you get a questionnaire in the commercial business world. I want to implement it here. And as for bonuses, there are 3 types I want. The first is the top performers should get little extra. Top performers, as measured by their peers, their managers, and their subordinates. And that should come from the bottom, who shouldn't get a pay rise. Now, that will need a lot of discussion with unions. The third, I've already said customer service would be the second. The third would be by way of productivity increases. Now, that will save the state money, because if we have 80,000 public sector employees currently, and slowly through people leaving, retiring, we don't replace them at the same level, right? And we end up doing things much more efficiently over a period of years, incrementally. It will save the state money. We will get better customer service. It's a win-win. And I'm sorry, by coming up with these terms, I really do sound like another slimy politician, which I can assure you I am not.
Let's talk about asylum seekers and refugees. You say you would have a new approach to dealing with those. Now, what's that?
Sure. Rosie, that is a good question, and it's certainly in the pulse of the nation at the moment. Firstly, I come from a refugee family. Twice we were refugees. My grandmother had to escape Constantinople in the early 1920s to avoid being murdered. Okay? So my grandmother, then she went to Egypt. In Egypt we were refugees. We had to leave in the early 60s because of the Suez crisis. And we moved for a while to the UK. I have absolute sympathy for refugees. It is a human thing that we should help others. If we saw a family off a sinking ship, we would rescue them. What I'm absolutely against, though, is being taken advantage of as a nation. In other words, I have some sympathy for people who want a better life and they want to move to the EU to get good jobs, but Cyprus and the rest of the EU does not apply. The only sympathy I have, the real sympathy, is for those who are fleeing persecution. Now, my approach will be different. And by the way, anybody fleeing persecution, without lying about it, or lying that they're actually 16 when in fact they're 30 years old, the solution is EU-wide. Let's think about this. Rosie, most refugees here don't want to be here. They want to be in France, Germany, the UK, which is the bullseye. That's where they all want to go. Okay? Now, my solution is an EU-wide problem. We should discuss it EU level. As you're probably aware, Britain and Turkey have been discussing the potential of refugees who are going through the system being moved to Turkey. There's also the one on Rwanda, but let's not get complicated. My solution is we have our fair share of quota to help those who really are in need as a temporary measure, okay? Because let's remember, in my analogy of a sinking ship, we would rescue people, we would do that as human beings and under the laws of the sea, but they wouldn't expect to be put into an upgraded cabin and live there for 5 years. So it's got to be reasonable. There's a very fine line between being a decent human being and being an honourable state under EU and being taken advantage of. So we've got to find the middle line. I believe I can.
Yes, but you haven't said what you would do with the asylum seekers and refugees and migrants that turned out not to be refugees, for example.
Well, no, they have no right to live here. Now, we have a process at the moment which I think needs fixing because it takes too long. I mean, what is the point in sticking people in custody for years on end until they're heard? I mean, one solution is if we can resolve the Cyprus problem, because in the occupied areas in the north and Turkey, nobody could rightfully say that they will be persecuted if they come from certain parts of Africa or or similar, is to do a deal with them. It'll still cost money, but it'll create less of a problem for us. Any politician that says, "Oh, I will sort the problem out, we will never have refugees ever again in Cyprus, asylum seekers," it is not true. It cannot be done. In the same way, if a politician says, "I will slash taxes tomorrow, I will do this and I'll do that," it cannot be done. I'm giving practical, honest solutions, which will need further study, will need the assistance of other parts of society within Cyprus, but I have those solutions.
Okay, we have to leave it there, Andronicos. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. And we'll point people in the direction of your website, andronicos.cy, where they can read all the things that you've been talking about and more that we didn't have time to cover. But many thanks for joining me.
Rosie, my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. Have a great day.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
In collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
The biggest achievement of Crime Stoppers has been the ability of the public to be able to give information about crime anonymously.
There's no way I could have kept prostituting without the drugs. There's no way I could have had my body used like a public toilet, because that's actually what prostitution is.
And then the fourth series I started 3 days after I'd won the Oscar, so the whole of the Monarch of the Glen experience was all interplatted with the Gosford Park Oscar experience.
I was working with Ronnie James Dio, and David was going to reform Whitesnake in 2003.
Cyprus was chosen because Cyprus is a stable, peaceful and secure place.
We have to really look closely. What are we doing with children? What are we doing with adolescents? And what are we doing with adults that can help them move into a more literate situation?
The ones that I'm proudest of are the ones that were true discoveries, where we found something we didn't know existed.
And another of those independent candidates is the former rector of the University of Cyprus. It's a welcome to the Cyprus News Digest to Konstantinos Christofides. Konstantinos, what is it exactly that made you decide you should stand for the presidency of Cyprus?
First of all, the future of my country, the future of new generations, of course, the political problem, and the fact that we have a vision, we have plans for this country. And this is why I decided to run for these elections.
You've got, should we call it a small political party behind you? Tell me a little bit about the history of that group of people.
No, I'm sorry, it's not a political party. It's just a movement of, let's say, a political socialism movement. And it's a movement of approximately 1,500 people. This is the number of our members, and it's called a New Wave. It was established beginning of 2019. This movement is just behind me now for these elections.
Right, now then, can you tell us a little bit about the policies that you would like to outline to voters?
Well, first of all, I have to inform you that this movement is connected with Vol Europa, which is a pan-European movement for the Federation of Europe. We are federalists. We are looking for a united Europe with a common foreign policy, with a common economy, with a common defense and common security system. So this is our European, if you want, friends, our European partners.
Do you think that's actually feasible when you look at the discrepancies between the various European members at the moment, particularly with regard to the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, this was the vision of Victor Hugo, 200 years ago. And I'm sure that one day the European nations will understand that their future is common. So there are discrepancies for sure. There are different interests because today the European nations are looking more at their own interests rather than the interests of the continent. But I'm absolutely sure that one day this is going to change.
Can you tell me a bit about things like corruption? How, if you're elected, would you fight the problem that we have? It seems to be endemic in Cyprus.
Well, this is the main problem of our island. I mean, this is the problem of corruption is it's cost a lot. It costs a lot in every aspect. So I think we are ready to change a lot of things concerning this thing. Concerning, for example, the justice system, the system of meritocracy. We would like to change a lot of things, connecting how we can choose the different people that they have power in this country. I mean, this is for sure.
Yeah, well, I think we all agree that we want to do that, but how would you go about doing it?
Well, I mean, first of all, something that we have to do is to modernize our juridic system and give more independence to our independent, if you want, institutions of Cyprus. Divided the general procurator, for example, it has to be independent. We have to have someone independent as a lawyer of the president, and also as a lawyer for the rest of the system. This is something that we have to do. But I think meritocracy, it's very, very important if we want to beat corruption in Cyprus.
And you're talking presumably there particularly about public servants, civil servants.
Exactly.
Okay, and let's talk about the other thing that seems to be high on people's agenda, and that's immigration.
Yes. Well, immigration is becoming a problem, and I think, first of all, it's very, very important. I mean, the system of outside, we have to be able to recognize, I mean, the real refugees rather than the economic refugees. This is very, very important. And we have to be able to decide for each case who can stay and who can go back to his country. This is very, very important.
Should certainly asylum seekers, until they are properly processed, be allowed to work so that they could be less of a burden on the state and contribute to our economy?
Yes, these people, they have to be allowed to work, of course. We have to let's say, to adapt these people in our economy, rather to give them, like extra support or to finance these people without to be in the market of the work.
And what about things like social welfare? The pensions, particularly the low-income pensioners, are suffering particularly at the moment with the cost of living crisis. Now, several candidates have said they would raise the pensions, but they haven't told us where the money would come from.
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to take care to reduce the cost of energy, to reduce the cost of electricity, for example. And this is something which is going to help a lot the people that they need more our help. And also we have to be able to offer to these people the so-called social salary. Like transport, health, and all these benefits that they have to have without to pay any more on this for the services.
How would you reduce the cost of electricity?
Well, if we go for example, today the cost of electricity is close to 30 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm sure that if we go, for example, with these green social photovoltaic parks that we propose, we can go down to 7-8 cents. So we can reduce it by 3-4 times.
And how long would it take to build that park?
Well, this can start tomorrow, and every few months add more megawatt. And it's going to take, of course, 2-3 years to install everything. But from now we can start to set up these parks, and slowly we will reduce the price of electricity. Starting from 30 cents, go down to 25, to 20, to 15, to 10, until it will come to 7 cents.
What about liberalising the electricity sector? It's about 7 or 8 years now that we've said it shouldn't be a monopoly, and yet it still is. Do you think there's anything you'd be able to do about that?
Yeah, but we propose something more and more important, I think. I mean, we propose to build this social photovoltaic solar parks that every Cypriot can be shareholder. So this is the new trend of use of electricity. I mean, the electrical power, I mean, the solar power doesn't belong to few people, friends of the political system. It belongs to every citizen. The sun and the wind belong to every citizen. So every citizen has to be able to be part of this project. This is the real liberation of the market.
And the thing we haven't spoken about, of course, is the Cyprus problem. Now, some of the people standing are very much, it seems, working towards a two-state solution here and partition. What's your view?
Totally against to that. And what I'm saying, for example, I think Cyprus has to be ready to apply to become a member of NATO. And I truly believe that becoming a member of NATO will be able to solve the international part of the Cyprus problem. It has to do with warranties and a right of intervention and these kind of things. And the internal part of the Cyprus problem has to do with the European Union acquis communautaire. So, application to become a member of NATO. This is our suggestion.
Okay, but how would that actually solve the Cyprus problem? I know that Turkey is already a member of NATO, but there are obviously disagreements between Turkey and the Republic of Cyprus. Do you think that they might say we don't want Cyprus in NATO? For sure, I would think NATO is not going to in any way do anything on the ground here in Cyprus if we join when we're already divided.
Yes, but on the other hand, it's very important to show our intention to take the historical decision that we belong to the Western world. And if Turkey doesn't want us, it's a problem of Turkey, it's not a problem of the Republic of Cyprus.
Well, it would be our problem if Turkey vetoed our entry.
Yes, I agree with that. But, on the other hand, it's going to be very difficult for Turkey to veto Finland, Sweden, Cyprus, and to be in general against the extension of NATO. So I think Cyprus is a very important part for NATO. We are in a very, very, let's say, sensitive part of the world. And I'm sure that NATO one day will like to include Cyprus as a member.
Right. Have you got one last thing you'd like to tell me about your hopes for our country?
Well, something I would like to say. Today, for example, 22% of young people are in the unemployment. I think this country has the potential to be developed, to create more jobs, quality jobs for young people, and to be able to keep young people in Cyprus rather than to see every day our students, our graduates to leave the country almost every year by thousands.
But you were for years rector of the University of Cyprus. You've worked with young people. Why is it, do you think, that so few of them have registered to vote or bother to go to the polling booths when they are registered?
Because young people, they don't believe anymore to the politicians. They don't believe anymore. They are looking what's happening in this country for the last 60 years. And this is why they don't want to join this corrupted political system. This is the reason.
Well, that is Konstantinos Christofides. Thank you very much for joining me. He's one of the independent candidates for our upcoming presidential elections. Is there anywhere online people can see what your policies are?
Of course. www.neokima.org.cy. neokima.org.cy.
Thank you very much indeed.
Welcome. Thank you.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.